Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming this evening. I have to admit, I'm pretty ill, but the fact that Badr is with us today makes me feel much better. So I really hope I can battle through this. And if I lose completely my voice or my stamina or whatever, then Bianca will jump in and rescue us in chairing this Majlis. So actually, it is due to Bianca that I have the joy to know Badr, because she organized an amazing workshop on AI and other genetics and other challenges, contemporary challenges in Islamic discussed in Islamic thought. And Badr was in that conference, so he was presenting on something completely different, actually AI and the Moroccan madrasa system than today, which shows his versatility. And then we had a discussion, and I was thrilled to learn that he studied in the traditional Moroccan school system, and also that he was a musician. And of course, I think everyone here would know that music is a very contested topic, has been always a very contested topic in Islam. And but to hear about a chanting faqih, chanting faqihs, so legal specialist, from a singing faqih, who is Badr, because he is both a faqih and a singer, an excellent musician. That's a very, very unique possibility. So yeah, Badr, please introduce us to
Thank you,
to your
Stefan.
word.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your kind invitation and for the wonderful work you have done in organizing this Majlis or Majalis. Right. Oh, I keep seeing seeing people joining. So right. So this is Bab Mahrouq for those who visited Fas in Morocco. It's one of the ancient gates in Fas, whose name literally means the gate of the burned, Bab Mahrouq. In 1374, a man from Al-Andalus, accused of zandaqa or heresy, was executed here, uh, suffocated, then burned, following a fatwa steeped in political intrigue. That man is or was Lisanuddin ibn al-Khatib. Lisanuddin ibn al-Khatib, a Muslim Andalusian polymath. He was a poet, historian, philosopher, physician, and a statesman, whose verses, by the way, still grace the walls of Alhambra Palace. For much of his life, he served as a wazir to the Sultan of Granada. So this tragic story reveals a deeper truth. A fatwa, a legal opinion, can swiftly move from jurisprudence to theology, transforming scholarly disagreements and debates into accusations of disbelief. So what does this story have to do with poetry, music, and theology? In my presentation, I would like to explore a few questions that lie at the heart of my research and in many ways my personal journey. First, can the poetic and musical genres, Andalusian Muwashshahs and Zajals, enrich Islamic education and theology? Can Muwashshahs and Zajals complement traditional manzumat or nazm in other words, didactic poems, to help us respond to the ethical and epistemological challenges of modern Islamic discourse. How do these Andalusian genres bring together fields that often treated separately, like theology, law, art, music, and language? Can they help us imagine a more integrated and human approach to teaching and understanding Islam? And finally, when we compare Muwashshahs and Zajals with scholastic poems known as manzumat or nazm, what do we learn about how faith and knowledge were transmitted and how they might be reimagined today? Before answering these questions, let me share what inspired this topic. So this topic grew from both personal experience and academic my academic journey. First, from observing the current state of Islamic discourse, which obviously struggles with ethical and theological tensions, with the rise of radical movements, rigid interpretations, and exclusivist narratives that leave little room for beauty, nuance, and empathy. Second, from my years of training, like Stefan mentioned, in classical Islamic texts in madrasas across North Africa, where nazm or didactic poems was a core learning method. So we used to memorize these nazm and recite them in rhythmic groups, as I will demonstrate in a while. And third, from my humble vocal training in a Quranic recitation, Sufi chanting, and Andalusian music, where I discovered the deep musicality of theology itself. And finally, from my this is actually a recent discovery after years from my PhD. So my PhD research was on an 11th century Cordoban jurist and theologian. His name was Marwan ibn Ali al-Buni. So he's from Cordoba. Then he later settled in Buna, modern day Annaba, in Algeria, which incidentally is where I was born. So in many ways, this research brought me home, both geographically and spiritually, let's say. So my central point or claim in this topic is that Andalusian poetry and music complement theology and jurisprudence. Let's consider them, the jurisprudence and theology, the two wings of Islamic discourse, right? So Muwashshahs and Zajals do not replace a nazm or manzumat. Rather, they broaden them and by adding elements of beauty, like imagination, emotion, and ethical reflection to intellectual study. To support this, I'm going to proceed in four parts. So I'm going to situate Muwashshahs and Zajals in the multi-religious and multicultural world of Al-Andalus. Then define these poetic and musical forms, their structure, language, and themes. Then I'm going to compare them with scholastic nazm or manzumat, traditionally used to teach aqidah or theology, law, or jurisprudence, and among other disciplines. And finally, I'm going to try to reflect on their relevance for Islamic education today, and asking how these genres can help us teach and think about religion in more holistic, creative, and humane ways. Right, to begin, let's return to Al-Andalus, Muslim-ruled Spain. There, as we all know, remarkable mix of peoples, Iberians, Muslims, Berbers, Jews or Amazigh, Christians, Slavs, and Africans and others, created an extraordinary cultural synthesis. Out of this pluralism emerged two poetic genres that reshaped Arabic literature, Muwashshahs and Zajals. So the Muwashshah, meaning in English something like girdled or ornamented, it was a new type of Arabic poetry, strophic poetry, that broke from the classical qasida, which you see here in this slide. This is a very famous qasida, بانت سعاد فقلبي اليوم متبول. So unlike the mono-rhymed qasida, such as Ka'b ibn Zuhair, this qasida here, Ka'b ibn Zuhair's burda, it's known as burda, or Imru al-Qais Qifa Nabki. The Muwashshah used multiple rhymes. I colored them, these red words, makbulu, makhulu, tulu, ma'lulu, mashmulu, ya'alilu, maqbulu, etc. So Muwashshah used multiple rhymes and meters, giving it a fresh musical quality. For example, so this is the qasida, right? You see here's the qasida. Now I'm going to show you a Muwashshah. Right, this is a Muwashshah known as Jadaka al-Ghaythu by Ibn al-Khatib, the person, the character, the polymath, the wazir I introduced at the beginning of my presentation. So this is a Muwashshah, Jadaka al-Ghaythu, and it follows this the pattern A A B B B A A. So you've probably heard the melody. جادك الغيث إذا الغيث هما يا زمان الوصل بالأندلس لم يكن وصلك إلا حلما في الكرى أو خلسة المختلس So this is the text is old, belongs to the 14th century Ibn al-Khatib, but the music is a contemporary one. So the Muwashshah arguably was not meant to be read, right? To be read as a prose, or it was performed. There's a debate. I don't want to go into details, but for me, the strongest opinion is that Muwashshah was meant to be sung with instruments, and this was recorded. There's evidence for that. Tawshih al-Tawshih, for example, and other sources mention that that tradition or that practice. Now, Zajal. We said that we're talking about Muwashshahat and Zajal, or Muwashshah in singular, and Zajal. So Zajal in Arabic literally means making sound. As simple as that. To make sound is Zajal in Arabic, and it's a natural development of al-Muwashshah. So it's a Muwashshah's lively cousin, if I may put it like this, and it emerged from everyday language. It uses the Arabic spoken in streets and markets, if you want, while also strophic. The Zajal was more spontaneous and popular in tone. In terms of themes, Zajal themes were usually simple, like it discusses love and friendship, satire, or daily life, and usually expressed in colloquial Arabic mixed with other languages. So the red words here in the slide are normally colloquial words or pronunciations of some classical words. أجي ومحسن وجا وملوان ودابا أو بدات وسقطها. All these words are not classical Arabic. And we're talking about a text from the 11th century. Or arguably 11th to 14th century. We know specifically with this Zajal Qumtara, we don't know much about it, but I'm going to add more examples where we can know exactly about the origin of the text. So Zajal uses a mixture of languages, especially Romance, Tamazight, and other local words. Here, for example, these are some words I found in my own readings. I was reading some Zajal from Ibn Quzman, for example, the best preserved collection of Azjal from the 11th century. We find Arabic texts, and then we meet words like senor and pandera, which is this bandir, right? Yenayir and Eshkid, which is Berber, among other words. And the best of all is that the kharja, which is the kharja is the exit, the last line, which is performed to end the song, which includes some Romance words and Arabic words. I explained in the slide. The Zajal, we are more sure about its purpose. So it was certainly made to be performed, often with refrains and rhymes, rhythms the audience could join in. So it's if you watch some ensembles, jawqa, how they perform, it's really open to other groups to join in the performance. And just to a little piece of evidence here, writers such as Ibn Sana al-Mulk from the 13th century, and Tifashi, Ahmed al-Tifashi from the late 13th, emphasized the fact that Zajal was or has musical roots. And later collections of Zajal were even circulated as a song books. They were no longer collections of poem or poetry. They were considered as song books used by North African Muslims and Jews in North Africa until our day, our times. This is a brief comparison. Like I wanted to put together the Zajal and Muwashshah, so you can see the features of each genre. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that this Zajal Qumtara, for example, is this is the first Zajal I studied at school, maybe in 2007 or 2008, and I'm still performing this in my repertoire with fellow musicians. We perform it in this colloquial Arabic, in Spanish and Hebrew, and it's very beautiful. And it goes like قم تراها براعم اللوز تندفي عن كل جيل والنسيم سقطها في الحوض والندى كباب عليها. So okay, so now to bother this flow, I wanted to add here that despite their cultural and intellectual significance, both Muwashshahs and Zajals, have often been overlooked. And this kind of neglect can be traced to shifts in political power, periods of conflict, religious fanaticism sometimes, and geographical divides. Yet the enduring insights of these works remain clear. One contributing factor in the broader lack of attention to Maghribi scholarly works and practices, because when you talk about Muwashshahs and Zajals, we are talking about Maghribi Islam, Maghribi North African Islam. This lack of attention to this scholarly work, especially in the study of Islam, including the specific teaching methods connected to these genres, it's goes back to the disconnection between al-Mashriq wal-Maghrib. There's a kind of lack of balance. I need really to skip this. I just wanted to say that that there was a over-reliance on what comes from Mashriq, from the Middle East, in terms of Islamic education in general. And there is a lack of knowledge and interest on everything that comes from Maghrib. Even Ibn Hazm said, أنا الشمس في جو العلوم منيرة ولكن عيبي أن مطلعي الغرب. Ibn Hazm was complaining that Ibn Hazm is an Andalusian scholar. He was really moved by this fact that there is less care and attention to the scholars of that Maghrib, including Al-Andalus. Even Al-Dhahabi, in his history, Tarikh al-Islam, mentioned that most of scholars of Al-Andalus, we do not pay much attention to them. That's a quote from Dhahabi. In our time, this historical oversight was further compounded in modern times by the influence of modern Islamic discourses and modern political Islam and other things like that. And that deepened the neglect of Andalusian literature and musical traditions. And yet the Muwashshahs and Zajals are often valuable. They offer valuable opportunities to recover neglected aspects of Islamic thought. I think that can be achieved by exploring the intersections of aqidah, fiqh, al-adat, so creed, law, customs, while also highlighting the aesthetic dimensions of Islam. So these genres, al-Muwashshahs and Zajals, demonstrate how melodies and poetic intricacy can convey theological concepts such as Tawheed, Asma'ullah, God's names and beauty, and even foster social unity and promote tolerance. So now I'm going to introduce
sorry,
please, yes.
But if you want to talk more about the Maghrib being neglected, you can now or later, because that's extremely important. And I found paradigmatic that, or very exemplary, that even such a great mind like Hodgson, in his Venture of Islam, when he revolutionized the way thinking about Islamic civilization, he talks about the Nile to Oxus, and I never understood why to stop at the Oxus, but even more obviously why to stop at the Nile. There is much more land, and it's not negligible cultural achievements there. So yeah, if you have an insight, why is that, or you can explain better, that would be good.
I just took note of this, and I prefer to get back to it after the after the end of our discussion. Okay. So after Muwashshahs and Zajals, now this is a brief introduction to the scholastic poetic genre known as novel. So before we return to our Muwashshahs and Zajals, we need to understand this genre, which has shaped Islamic learning, al-nazm and al-manzumat or al-anzam. So al-mufrad, the singular is nazm, the plural can be manzuma or anzam or manzumat, jam'u mu'annath salim. So this kind of poetry is completely different from aesthetic poetry. By the way, there are some scholars who do not even consider nazm as poetry at all. So it's different from the artistic poetry that expresses imagination and emotion. And so the nazm is essentially didactic, right? It's a teaching poem. And it can range from just a few lines, like if you read منظومة هذا البيقونية in the مصطلح الحديث, in the terminology of hadith, or الغرامية, the love poem in مصطلح الحديث by Ibn Qunfudh القسنطيني. So these include like 20 to 30 line of verses, so they are very short. But there are also alfiyat, alfiyat ibn Malik. In the alfiya means a novel which consists of 1,000 or more, like minimally 1,000 verse, and that's a long. So alfiyat ibn Malik, alfiyat al-Iraqi, in hadith ibn Malik in nahu, alfiyat al-Maraqi al-Saud in uṣūl al-fiqh, etc. So they range from just a few lines to several thousand verses, and it's used primarily in the Islamic sciences like fiqh and uṣūl al-fiqh, mantiq, logic, Quranic recitation, tajweed, kalam, theology, tawheed, aqidah, etc. I have a very little vlog called Madrasa Readings, where I explain manzumat, how they work in madrasa system. So if you want to check more about how these manzumat are studied in different disciplines, you can check it there. So, and interestingly, by the way, Ibn Abdi Rabbihi, who is famous author of Al-Iqd al-Farid, an Andalusian scholar, Ibn Abdi Rabbihi, and to whom some Arabic sources attribute the invention of al-Muwashshahat. So al-Muwashshah is attributed to Ibn Abdi Rabbihi. He also composed a novel in medicine. It's interesting that people wrote anzam in disciplines outside or out of Islam, like religious disciplines. So there are manzumat in astrology, in طب, medicine, and I have here in front of me هذا رقم الحلل في نظم الدول. This is a Ibn al-Khatib, by the way, we're talking about Ibn al-Khatib. Ibn al-Khatib composed a novel of Islamic history. He versified the entire history of the Islamic world in poetry in this book. So those poems were often named after their final rhyming letters, such as a nuniya, ra'iya, lamiya, etc. And some became quite famous across different theological schools. And here you have some examples. This ra'iya of al-Zanjani, ra'iyat al-Maqdisi, nuniyat ibn al-Qayyim, the most famous one, and إضاءة الدجنة, هكذا إضاءة الدجنة of al-Maqqari, and Safariniyya. Now, nazm or manzumat, they have some distinctive traits. They are often weak artistically. That's why I said that some scholars do not consider them poetry at all. Now, normally poetry doesn't start with Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasul. No, most of these manzumat, they open with praising God and salatu wassalam ala the Prophet. Poetry normally doesn't start like this in Arabic tradition. So they are often weak, right, poetically. They are more functional, yes, but they are more functional than beautiful. So there is a they're more useful for study and memorization and so forth. And they mostly use the Rajas meter. Raja's meter is humorously called Himar al-Shu'ara, the donkey of poets. It's easy to use it, to ride, to get on and reuse, because it's easy. That's why it's described as compared to a donkey, Himar al-Shu'ara. Because it's repetitive rhythm and it's really simple. Most of manzumat are from this meter. The thing here about manzumat is that they can also carry political, historical, and sectarian biases. And this have influenced how they are taught and received. Because manzumat are easy to memorize, they were ideal for public teaching and for audiences with limited literacy. And you know that over-reliance on memorization sometimes replace deeper understanding. This happened and is still happening. But still, when manzumat are used wisely, a nazm can be beautiful and powerful. You probably know Ibn Ashir, Abdul Wahid Ibn Ashir, an Andalusian scholar, originally Andalusian. He lived in Fas. His shrine is there now. So Ibn Ashir reminds the students of Islamic knowledge of the need of for guidance when studying Islamic knowledge. He did that in his nazm Al-Murshid al-Mu'in. Al-Murshid al-Mu'in. So he used this nazm to say يصحب شيخا عارف المسالك يقيه في طريقه المهالك. He follows a teacher who knows the path very well, يقيه في طريقه المهالك, guiding him safely away from dangers. Yeah, something like that. And this is a very famous nazm, Abdul Wahid ibn Ashir. We used to recite it, like it's widely recited in North African madrasas. It's يقول عبد الواحد ابن عاشر. Even the melody is very simple. So all people, including people who cannot read Arabic, they just sit together in circles and just repeat, because the melody is very simple. And most of the words of the nazm are very, very simple. So it goes like يقول عبد الواحد ابن عاشر مبتدئا بسم الإله القادر صلى وسلم على محمد وآله وصحبه والمقتدي وبعد فالعون من الله المجيد في نظم أبيات للأمي تفيد. So it's just mentioning the purpose of his nazm. So it's a comprehensive nazm. It includes an introduction in uṣūl fiqh, introduction in aqidah, and then the 5 pillars of Islam, and then finally final chapter on a section on tasawwuf, on Sufism. Right. However, not all manzumat studied today promote tolerance. So within comparative theology, theological studies, some manzumat contain verses that are explicitly exclusionary or hostile to theological opponents, which can be dangerous. And that's why Ibn Ashir was advising يصحب شيخا عارف المسالك. That's why he was emphasizing that you must study these with a very wise sheikh or teacher. Otherwise, this can be dangerous. So here, I don't want to read the translation. It's here in front of you, but this is a nazm studied in Islamic Aqidah, so where Az-Zanjani says فذو الرفض منسوب إلى الشرك عادل عن الحق ذو بهت على الله والنذور. So he's refuting another doctrine, another school of thought, the Shia. And Ibn al-Qayyim, that's the one which is more known and recited and explained. Ibn al-Qayyim in his famous Nuniyya goes even further against theological schools with whom he disagreed on matters such as the nature of and the attributes of God. Schools like Al-Jahmiyya, Al-Mu'tazila, Al-Asha'ira, Shia, Sufiya, all these sects to Ibn al-Qayyim here. You can see what he's saying. وَلْعَنْهُمْ لَعْنًا كَبِيرًا وَاغْزُهُمْ بِعَسَاكِرِ التَّعْطِيلِ غَيْرَ جَبَانِ إلى آخره, etc. And these verses demonstrate how nazm could become tools of sectarian polemic with terms such as he uses more aggressive words than these actually. He described people as animals, donkeys, bulls, evil manipulators. He uses heresy very often. He used these words to describe people like Ibn Arabi and Ibn al-Arif al-Tilimsani, like key figures in Tasawwuf, in Sufism. Ibn Sina, the philosopher, Tusi, Nasiruddin. So all of these, according to Ibn al-Qayyim, are accused of heresy and disbelief. This Nuniyat Ibn al-Qayyim is widely discussed until now, nowadays. It's approved. People agree with it. Like people with Salafi or Wahhabi background, of course. Like I can name a few published works or commentaries, maybe also audio and videos. The current Mufti of Saudi Arabia, like appointed a few days ago, by the way, Salih al-Fawzan, who became the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, he has a commentary on this, where he simply approves and things like this. Ibn Uthaymeen has a commentary, and he's supporting this kind of ideas. Another example after Ibn al-Qayyim could be Al-Maqdisi, Ibn Tahir, وَهْجُرْ أَرْبَابَ الْكَلَامِ بِأَسْرِهِمْ فَكُنْ مِنْهُمْ يَا صَاحِي وَيْكَ عَلَى حَذَرٍ. So he is refuting the people of Kalam, theologians, and this basically goes against Al-Mu'tazila, Al-Asha'ira, and Al-Maturidiyya. One last example from this manzumat. Al-Maqqari is not Salafi, is Ash'ari, but he, in his إضاءة الدجنة, widely studied manzuma in Ash'ari creed, he mixes or merges some things from theology and law together, where I think that this is more suitable for a jurisprudence. This belongs to law. وَقَتْلُهُ لِلْكُفْرِ لَا لِلْحَدِّ وَذَلِكَ الْجَزَاءُ لِلْمُرْتَدِّ. There I can go. I can show you more and more of these examples from this studied manzumat in Aqidah across the Sunni world. So such verses now raise important questions. How should we engage with Islamic scholarly traditions, past and present, when some of its language or some of their ideas seem to encourage division or hostility? Also, we can ask, what are the responsibilities? What responsibilities do educators and even students of Islamic studies have when studying texts like this? Just to confirm something here, manzumat remain central to Islamic education, but here my point in this presentation, and to move forward, I think that pairing nazm with the Andalusian forms, Muwashshahs and Zajals, could help rebalance the theological and legal mindset towards a more open and moderate discourse. Let's bother our flow of ideas again with this question. But if I want to pair the study of theology and jurisprudence or Islamic discourse with Muwashshahs and Zajals, isn't music haram? Isn't it prohibited? Actually, music you know that well, here I put here briefly the discussion on music. That there is the opinion of the vast majority, so of scholars, including the majority of Malikis, majority of Shafi'i, majority of Hanafi, majority of Hanabila, who thought that music is instrumental music, playing instruments, is prohibited except in a few situations, celebrating a few things. We find that there are scholars who, like Ibn Hazm, Ibn al-Arabi, al-Ma'afiri from the Maliki school, among others, who allowed music. And it's now here, it's well known that most of Andalusian jurists were Malikis. Most of them, they were Malikis. And the common fatwa or the official fatwa that represents the Maliki madhab is that says that music is prohibited. Notably, Muwashshahs and Zajals challenged the Maliki orthodoxy in Al-Andalus, and that led to numerous Maliki jurists to rethink the topic. And I mentioned Ibn al-Arabi, who was arguably influenced by the Zahiri approach to the topic, Ibn Hazm, who allowed music. So it's possible to combine these two traditions. I mean, the Muwashshah, Zajal, and Nazm on theological and jurisprudential studies, because music is not an issue of consensus, in my opinion. That there is an obvious disagreement among scholars. Now, I feel like I skipped this this slide. So turning back to Muwashshahs and Zajals now. I wanted to say that it's time for a few examples from this this tradition. I'm praising Muwashshahs and Zajals there, and now I wanted to show you more examples and how they are relevant to the study of theology and jurisprudence. So here you see the first Muwashshah by Ibn al-Sabbagh. In his Muwashshah, this Sufi jurist Ibn al-Sabbagh al-Judhami from the 12th century combines elements from theology. That there's a tawheed, monotheism, with tasawwuf. There's an element of tasawwuf here, which is intercession, tawassul, and he emphasizes that tawheed or monotheism rooted in theological reflection on nazar, because he uses the term nazar, is the straight path and the source of his heart's purity. Ibn Sabbagh also seeks the fulfillment of his heart's longing in this Muwashshah by visiting the grave of the Prophet Muhammad, and a theme that we find very often in his works. The theme of tawassul itself, intercession through the Prophet, is really frequent, motif in Muwashshahs and Zajals, even though it brings a theological debate. There's it's a very controversial topic in Islamic aqidah or theology. I mean, tawassul. Ibn al-Sabbagh also engages with another contested topic in theology when he invokes God by the attribute of al-mushfiq, the compassionate, which is not one of the 99 names of Allah in Islamic tradition. And this point reflects a personal and intimate plea, if you want, as Ibn Sabbagh here writes or uses the al-mushfiq. This for me exemplifies a certain theological flexibility and tolerance that extended to the other faiths sometimes. In this other example, Ibn Khatima al-Ansari from the 14th century, he's a jurist, medical doctor, and poet. In this, in his Muwashshah, he invokes the Gospels, Al-Anajil, and the sanctity of Al-Masih, Jesus Christ. Such expressions highlight the interfaith sensitivity characteristic of Andalusian society. One more example from Ibn Quzman. Ibn Quzman, we mentioned him already. Ibn Quzman, he was described by Ibn Khaldun as the Imam al-Zajjalin. He described Ibn Khaldun calls Ibn Quzman or Ibn Guzman in Spanish sources. So Ibn Khaldun describes Ibn Quzman as the Imam al-Zajjalin. He's the Imam of the Zajal tellers, and the collection of Zajal of Ibn Quzman is the best preserved collection, and it's been studied by many scholars, Arabists and Orientalists. So Ibn Quzman describes the celebration of Eid here, right? Eid al-Adha. In this Zajal. So how people used to celebrate Eid al-Adha in Al-Andalus using a Zajal. And also always try to remember that Zajal is a song, right? We said that it's inherently a song. It's not just a poem to be read. Nobody would be reading this thing. It doesn't feel like a poem at all. So it's a song. So he's describing how, like the Andalusian tradition and customs of celebrating Eid al-Adha. And he employed this very simple language, full of colloquial words that avoids interpretative conflicts over foundational texts. So this Zajal, this Eid Zajal, encompasses the 3 levels of religion. If you can see that, there's Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. It imparts the fundamental rulings and etiquettes of Eid al-Adha. There is Tawheed, there is sincerity in worship. It is clearly for God's sake, right? Fahulillah. There is attending the Eid prayer at al-Musalla or the prayer room, prayer space, dressing well, every face adorned, spreading joy, and making children happy. All these are actually the sunan. We call them sunanul Eid. These are the features, the prescribed actions of celebrating Eid al-Adha. Additionally, it reflects the customs of the 11th century Al-Andalus, portraying the day's challenges. It says one suffers the heat with all the preparations, the sheep and things. The gathering of people, visits to the cemetery to honor the deceased, the mixture of joy and sadness. All these this experience is put together in a beautiful way in a song from the 11th century Al-Andalus. So this this tradition of writing this kind of they're simply writing Muwashshahs and Zajals evolved beyond mere trends to become deeply rooted practices within Sufi gatherings. From Andalusian Sufi masters such as Al-Ghawth, Abu Madyan, Ibn Arabi, Abu Hassan Shushtari, to contemporary leaders of Tasawwuf like Al-Amir Abdul Qadir, and Sheikh Mustafa Ahmed Al-Alawi, he died in 1934, from Mustaghanam, he's Algerian. So all these wrote Muwashshahs and Zajals, and that tradition became a profound medium for expressing key theological aspects of Islam, such as Tawheed, God's names and his attributes, prophecies, and the different mystical states, Hawal and Maqamat, while also reinforcing communal ties and fostering a spirit of tolerance and understanding across diverse cultures and faiths. Another example from Shushtari, the very famous Sufi master, but this should be the last one, because I wanted to focus on secular Muwashshahs and Zajals, not religious ones, not Sufi ones, to say that even secular art in Al-Andalus was aware of theology and shaped religious discourse. So in one of his Zajal, Shushtari says, اسم المليح ما يختلط اسم المليح ما يختلط افهمني قط. And unfortunately, we don't know the melody of this. Otherwise, it could be really interesting to sing it, because, as I said earlier, reading it like this is a bit rigid. محبوبي قد عم الوجود وقد ظهر في بيض وسود وفنا صار مع يهود وفي حروف وفي النقط. And look how he's writing. Like, this is very colloquial. We don't write this in classical Arabic or in standard Arabic. Fa, like just the letter fa, and the letters at the end are pronounced with a sukun, etc. So now to the final example of this genre, and to strengthen, to reinforce the connection or its connection to the study of theology and how it influences its potential in reshaping Islamic discourse. We need to go back to Lisanuddin ibn al-Khatib and his Muwashshah جادك الغيث. This is the one with the one I recited at the beginning with the translation. So what can we learn from his Muwashshah? جادك الغيث offers valuable insights into theology and theological study through its linguistic elegance and optimism, and rich lessons on life and faith. Ibn al-Khatib presents nature as a channel of divine presence and as an accessible reflection of Quranic descriptions of creation. So it echoes or mirrors the Quran in some ways. Theologically, this Muwashshah, through its deep engagement with nature, provides students with and scholars with a way to see God's signs in the world, reinforcing a spiritual connection to Al-Andalus rich geography, while moving beyond more restrictive or literal interpretation or orthodox interpretations found in certain Islamic schools. And such use of natural symbols creates a balanced perspective, portraying life as a harmonious creation rather than focusing solely on dichotomies like halal, haram, bid'ah, sunnah. So for students and scholars of theology, this adds layers of meaning to Islamic teachings, helping hopefully cultivate a more flexible and profound view of religious life and study. I think that engaging with such themes can deepen students' emotional and psychological connection to their studies. Because this is really inspiring. It inspires a heartfelt quest for understanding and a greater appreciation of the spiritual dimensions of theological study. So it's not just about the rules of studying in theology, but it goes beyond. It explores the aesthetic, the beauty of the divine or the sacred in real life, including in nature. So in our time, in an era where youth are increasingly exposed to ideological polarizations, such texts of Ibn al-Khatib and others, can guide them toward a well-rounded or thoughtful approach to faith instead of that rigid and sometimes dangerous approach, especially when not studied with qualified teachers and equipped with the good tools for that. So the Muwashshah manifests two levels. I'm just going through quickly through this few lines. I selected a few lines from the Muwashshah of Ibn al-Khatib Jadak al-Ghaythi. So it manifests, some of the themes from the theological questions or elements in the Muwashshah. It manifests two levels of qadar. There is qada and qadar. He evokes this element, which is well discussed and studied in theology. It also evokes, in a positive way, the controversy surrounding the theological questions of istighatha, or seeking help from others besides God, and shakwa, complaint, especially when we know that some theologians, especially more in our time, like in this time, clerics and theologians prohibit certain forms of istighatha, tawassul. They discourage shakwa, bighayrillah. So just to gradually conclude my topic, some historians argue that the so-called golden age of religious tolerance in Al-Andalus is merely a myth. We know that some authors say that, right? However, I find that this song, let's call it a song, Muwashshah, and other Muwashshahat and Zajals, offer a different and perhaps more nuanced perspective. It refers this Muwashshah here in the last lines. It says عارضت لفظا ومعنى وحولا. عرضت لفظا ومعنى وحلا قول من أنطقه الحب فقال هل درى ظبي الحمى أن قد حمى قلب صب حله عن مكنسي. So this is the last one, and in which there is something very interesting. It refers to a person here. He's referring to another theologian, another poet, another scholar from the same time. Ibn al-Khatib is referring to Ibn Sahl. Ibn Sahl, هكذا. He is a composer of another Muwashshah. He's from Ishbiliya, Seville, and he died in 1251. And the point is that his conversion to Islam, interestingly, has never been definitely confirmed. He was a Jew. He belonged to the Jewish community of Al-Andalus. And so this, what Ibn al-Khatib is doing here, he is promoting the work of his colleague. I mean, he lived almost a century before him, but he was respected and a prominent scholar. Same way we look at Ibn al-Khatib and Ibn Sahl. So in light of this historical and theological complexity, I find that Jadak al-Ghaythu celebrates people like Ibn Sahl and his poetic genius, regardless of his religious identity. If you go and study the biography of Ibn Sahl from other sources, including Al-Maqqari and Ibn Khatib and other Al-Dhahabi and others, you'll find like it doesn't feel really well. They're not sure about something. It doesn't convey a peaceful feeling or connotation when they discuss his experience. Anyway, so I think that this subtle gesture by Lisanuddin ibn al-Khatib speaks volumes about the spirit of inclusivity and appreciation and acknowledgement that characterized Andalusian Muwashshahs and Zajals. So as we can see through this reference, Lisanuddin ibn al-Khatib reminds us that intellectual and artistic excellence transcends sectarian or confessional boundaries. And the last thing, sorry if this is taking a lot of time, but the last thing I wanted to say is that I find that incorporating the study of Muwashshahs and Zajals into Islamic theological studies is crucial. It's really important for expanding students' intellectual horizons beyond traditional commentaries and textbooks, many of which were shaped by taqlid al-a'ma, blind imitation or taqlid. These poetic forms, Muwashshahs and Zajals, provide a unique anthropological lens on faith and tradition. They enrich our understanding of Islamic epistemology by inviting new methods of study, such as thematic analysis, contextual criticism, and performance studies. Moreover, many Muwashshahs and Zajals offer valuable theological insights into the cultural, religious, and literary context of Al-Andalus. And through them, we can and we should better understand the social and historical context or milieu of medieval Islamic Spain. revealing the deep interplay between these disciplines. I mean, poetry, society, all fields, poetry, society, and theology. Finally, this approach does not exclude external methods such as contemporary approaches. I mean, contemporary anthropology or sociology, which can help frame and critically engage with some of the more controversial theological questions found in these texts known as manzumat. And this should be all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Badr. It has been a long tradition to accompany fireworks with music, and you just did this because the talk was a firework, and you also provided us music. So thank you very much for this. Before we get to the question, and I'd like to ask everyone to collect their questions, and then you can raise your digital or manual hands, and or just write me that you want to have a question, and then I please ask them rather than writing them if you can. I'd like to make some obvious points, and maybe also some less obvious, and ask you a question. So, well, one obvious point is that there is this Enlightenment idea and modern idea that there was the dogmatic Middle Ages, and then there is the liberal modernity, and obviously that's not quite as simple as it is. You demonstrated quite clearly what we know, that modernity can be much more dogmatic than the Middle Ages. But I really liked also the fact that you didn't fall into the other possible danger of saying that no, the pre-modern was necessarily much more open, because of course even Qayyim, though he was an amazing mind, well, so fundamentalism has its roots in the past as well, and dogmatism is not new either. So that's, yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. But if you want to say on some on this, then please do. The other is, it may be less so. It was much less obvious to me. With a friend who is here in the audience, I discovered something which we all know, the importance of definitions and how we understand terms. So, and it's specifically when it comes to music. Well, for me, it was that, okay, so if you want to use music in theology, but you say music is haram, then you just say what you are doing is not music. And that includes the Quran recitation, for instance, which is the most obvious example of that. And oh no, that's not music. But I thought it was kind of a hila. It was kind of a trick. But then I realized in this discussion with this friend that no, well, the trick is so well done that it is obvious for most Muslims that it is not music. So most Muslims really don't consider music what every Westerner would evidently consider music, like the recitation of the Quran, when it is melodical and rhythmic. So it is so interesting how we use terms, and yeah, and it's also, it doesn't only apply to music, but of course poetry is also a debated issue from the beginning. So it's maybe less well, it has more credentials than music, but still poetry was, while music is, I don't think, explicitly attacked in the Quran, poetry is. So I just wonder whether the fact that Nazm is not labeled as poetry is just because it is it's not good enough for real poetry, but it is also because it may be that it is too. Well, it's better not to associate such a text with something which is doubtful, like poetry can be. I don't know this. You would know. And then back to the question of the West, and well, also the Far East, of which we have, well, Far East of Islamic regions, of which we had a Majlis 2 weeks ago, and we will have a Majlis next week. The exclusion of them, and then I'm sorry, Maribel had to leave because we had discussions on this, and she of course published on that. That it may be that also that we see Al-Andalus, Spain, so exceptional. It is another type of exceptionalism because the same things or similar things, at least when it comes to tolerance, were also present in other lands. I don't know how much Andalus was more tolerant than Baghdad or Cairo. With their huge multi-faith communities. So, and well, and I would be curious of your opinion on this. And then the last, well, that's really a question, is for you. How is it for you as a scholar, singer? Is it kind of a natural continuation of the school and of the education you received, and that helps you because you must, or do you face any very severe criticism and difficulties because of trying to promote this interpretation of Islam, and also a just interpretation, this way of living Islam, how it is received, how it is for you?
Okay, I will start from the end. So yes, it is really challenging to promote. In some contexts, even to open up to discuss these topics, not just not let alone promoting them. So the very fact that you discuss the permissibility of music, this raises a lot of questions about your religious practice, religious life, your righteousness, and so. And the very names, just the names which come across this kind of discussions are also in these contexts are suspicious. We know we have just mentioned how Lisanuddin ibn al-Khatib ended, right? He was accused of heresy and so forth. So similar ideas circulate here and there Muslim communities, unfortunately. So, but there is also always space for discussion if these topics are introduced properly, especially when you start from these backgrounds, especially when you target the things like context in which these issues were discussed. You name the right names. You ask the right questions, like when you put Ibn al-Qayyim, al-Zanjani, al-Asfahani, and you put their text, what they say, and you ask straightforward question: how do you want to live and practice these lines in the modern Muslim society, for example? Like this confrontational way sometimes. And of course, when you are equipped with this classical training, like when you know what is uṣūl al-fiqh, when you know what is uṣūl al-ilm al-kalam, uṣūl al-tafsir, etc. So when you know the text and how they have been discussed, interpreted, and so forth, and where these questions are situated or localized, like this mas'ala, for example, when I made the comment on al-Maqqari, that he shouldn't have discussed a jurisprudential issue in a theological context, in a theological novel. This applies to Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, al-Tahawi, and other scholars. So that sometimes scholars, respected scholars, wrote scholastic books dedicated to teach early students, like young students, but unfortunately their textbooks got involved in political conflicts of their times. So showing that you are aware of this and contextualizing the mas'ala or the issue, I think is a good starting point if you want to open up about this issue. So I'm just saying that yes, this is really challenging for me, but because it's not fully cut off from the Islamic tradition, it's, as I'm trying to prove, it's continuity of the tradition in many ways, many parts of the Islamic tradition. And this leads to the second, the other question: was Al-Andalus more tolerant? The answer to me is not. It wasn't more tolerant. It's just because it was in Europe that led to contemporary questions or attention. It grabbed attention just because of its geographically complicated context. Otherwise, other places witnessed sometimes more tolerant, because when I say Andalus was tolerant, this is a relative tolerance. We know that there were conflicts. There were Lisanuddin. We are showing that Lisanuddin himself, the writer of this Muwashshah, was executed for a heresy. So this and he is a key figure from Al-Andalus who wasn't tolerated from his own people. So yeah, I think that I hope I answered two questions.
Yes, and I fully agree. I also liked that you pointed out that music, the use of music, doesn't necessarily means that something becomes liberal and all embracing, because it doesn't. And it reminded me something very interesting. I saw that video made by ISIS of the burning of that Jordanian pilot. I don't recommend watching it, but it's remarkably well done. And a friend of mine who is not involved in our field watched it as well, and then he asked me, what was this heavenly music at the end? And it was one of these songs sung by these jihadi songs, which is in itself so interesting that jihadis sing songs. Obviously, music should be prohibited, and then they sing, and the song is really beautiful. It's so beautiful that a friend of mine who has nothing to do with Islamic studies labeled it heavenly after having watched the Jordanian pilot burned by these people. So we have to be careful with music, because music can really soften things. I mean, can cut off it can work in a way that actually the words are losing their power, but it can also work that the words power remains, and it gets beautiful, and the killing gets the beauty of the music, which is really, well, not what you and I want from most music in general. Though of course that was one use of music from the very beginning. The military use of it it might be one of the most ancestral ones. All right, so okay, I will stop the recording for everyone to be fully free. And thank you, Badr, again. That was magnificent.